The moment Amara stepped into Charles Harrington's luxurious penthouse, she entered a world vastly different from the one she had known her entire life. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and the air smelled faintly of expensive cologne and freshly polished wood. Servants moved silently through the halls, their faces unreadable but polite as they stole curious glances at the barefoot girl dripping rainwater onto the pristine carpets. Charles led Amara to a spacious living room where Liam sat in his wheelchair, staring out the window at the city lights below. His curly brown hair was slightly messy, and his eyes held a mix of curiosity and suspicion as he turned to look at the newcomer. For a brief second, Amara locked gazes with him, and something unspoken passed between them, a flicker of hope on Liam's part and quiet determination on hers. "Liam," Charles said gently, breaking the silence, "this is Amara. She believes she can help you." Liam raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Help me? How?" Before Charles could intervene, Amara stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "I've seen people like you before, people who everyone thinks won't get better, but I believe your body still remembers how to walk. It just needs reminding." Her words hung in the air, simple yet powerful. For the first time in months, Liam looked intrigued rather than dismissive. He glanced at his father, who nodded encouragingly, though his expression betrayed a hint of doubt. Over the next few days, Amara settled into the Harrington household, much to the disapproval of the staff. They whispered behind closed doors, calling her a beggar, a fraud, and worse. Some even suggested that inviting her into their home was bad luck. But Charles ignored their complaints, driven by a desperate hope that perhaps this young girl might hold the key to unlocking Liam's recovery. Amara wasted no time getting to work. On her first morning, she asked for access to Liam's medical records, explaining that understanding his condition fully was essential. Charles hesitated, unsure whether to trust her with such sensitive information. However, he eventually relented, handing over the thick folder filled with test results, scans, and doctor's notes. As Amara flipped through the pages, her brow furrowed in concentration. To everyone's surprise, she pointed out patterns and anomalies that even the most experienced specialists had overlooked. "This here," she said, tapping a section of the report, "shows that some nerves in his legs are still responding. That means there's a chance if we stimulate them properly." Charles stared at her, astonished. No one had ever spoken about Liam's condition with such clarity and confidence. It wasn't magic or guesswork. It was careful observation combined with knowledge passed down through generations. Despite his lingering skepticism, Charles couldn't deny that Amara seemed to know what she was talking about. With Charles's permission, Amara began working closely with Liam. Her methods were unconventional, to say the least. Instead of relying solely on machines and medications, she introduced techniques rooted in tradition: herbal remedies, rhythmic breathing exercises, and gentle massages using oils infused with medicinal plants. At first, Liam resisted, finding the process tedious and uncomfortable, but Amara refused to give up, coaxing him with stories of others who had overcome similar challenges. One evening, as she massaged his legs with a fragrant oil blend, Amara told Liam about a boy from her village who had lost the use of his arm after falling from a tree. Everyone thought he'd never recover, but with patience and persistence, he regained full mobility within a year. "It's not just about the body," she explained softly. "Your mind has to believe you can do it too." Liam listened intently, captivated by her storytelling. For the first time since the accident, he allowed himself to imagine walking again, not as a distant dream but as a real possibility. Slowly, his resistance melted away, replaced by a newfound determination to try. As weeks turned into months, small changes began to emerge. One day, during a session focused on strengthening Liam's core muscles, Amara noticed a slight twitch in his right leg. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to send a wave of excitement through the room. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her eyes shining with triumph. Liam nodded, his face lighting up with a mixture of shock and joy. "I think so," he replied, his voice trembling. "It felt like something moving." Charles, who had been watching from the doorway, rushed forward, his heart pounding. Is this normal? Should we call a doctor? Amara shook her head, smiling reassuringly. No need. This is good news. It means his nerves are starting to wake up. We just have to keep going. Encouraged by these early signs of progress, Charles threw his full support behind Amara's efforts. He provided her with whatever resources she needed: special equipment, rare herbs imported from distant lands, even private consultations with experts willing to collaborate with her methods. Though the staff continued to grumble, their objections grew quieter as they witnessed Liam's gradual improvement. But it wasn't just physical healing that Amara brought to the Harrington household. She also introduced a warmth and humanity that had been missing for far too long. Unlike the cold professionalism of doctors, Amara treated Liam like a person, not a patient. She laughed with him, teased him about his favorite soccer team, and encouraged him to express his frustrations instead of bottling them up. In turn, Liam opened up to her in ways he hadn't with anyone else, sharing his fears, dreams, and memories of life before the accident. Even Charles found himself drawn to Amara's presence. She reminded him of the values he had abandoned in his relentless pursuit of success, compassion, humility, and faith in the unseen. One afternoon, as they sat together in the garden watching Liam practice stretching exercises, Charles voiced a question that had been weighing on his mind. Why did you approach me that night? Why take the risk of speaking to someone like me? Amara smiled, her gaze steady. Because I saw sadness in your eyes, and because I knew I could help. Sometimes people don't need fancy degrees or big titles to make a difference. All they need is belief, and the courage to act on it. Her words struck a chord deep within Charles. For years he had equated success with wealth and power, dismissing those less fortunate as irrelevant. But Amara's actions challenged that mindset, forcing him to confront the emptiness of his achievements without true connection and purpose. As the months rolled on, the bond between Charles, Liam, and Amara grew stronger. What started as a tentative partnership blossomed into a relationship built on trust, mutual respect, and shared hope. Though challenges lay ahead, the Harringtons and the girl who had once begged on street corners were united in their quest to rewrite Liam's story. And somewhere along the way, Charles realized that Amara's arrival wasn't just about saving his son. It was about saving him too, from the weight of guilt, the loneliness of ambition, and the illusion that money alone could heal a broken heart. In the heart of a sprawling, chaotic city where dreams were both born and crushed, there lived a man named Charles Harrington. To most people, he was the epitome of success, a self-made millionaire who had risen from nothing to build an empire. His name was synonymous with wealth, power, and influence. But behind the polished facade of his luxurious penthouse and the gleaming skyscrapers that bore his company's logo, Charles carried a burden so heavy it weighed down every moment of his life. Charles's story began decades ago in a small, forgotten town on the outskirts of the city. He grew up poor, living in a tiny house with leaky roofs and hand-me-down clothes. His father worked long hours at a factory, while his mother stitched garments late into the night to make ends meet. Despite their struggles, they instilled in Charles the value of hard work and determination. From a young age, he dreamed of escaping poverty and creating a better future for himself and his family. Years later, after countless sacrifices and sleepless nights, Charles achieved what many thought impossible. He founded a tech startup in a garage, pouring every ounce of his energy into making it succeed. The business took off, growing faster than anyone could have imagined. Within a decade, Charles became one of the richest men in the country. Yet despite all his achievements, something was missing. Money couldn't fill the void left by his strained relationship with his son Liam. Liam was Charles's pride and joy, or at least he used to be. At 8 years old, Liam was the light of Charles's life. With curly brown hair and bright blue eyes, he was the kind of child who lit up every room he entered. He loved soccer, puzzles, and exploring the outdoors. But everything changed 2 years earlier, when tragedy struck without warning. It happened on a rainy afternoon. Charles was stuck in yet another board meeting, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. Meanwhile, Liam was riding home from school, with his nanny when their car skidded on a wet road and collided with a truck. Though Liam survived, the accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors said the damage to his spine was severe, and walking again might never be possible. For Charles, this news shattered his world. Guilt consumed him. If only he hadn't been so obsessed with work. If only he had taken more time to be present. In Liam's life, maybe things would have turned out differently. Overwhelmed by regret, Charles threw himself into finding a cure. He consulted the best specialists, flew to distant countries for experimental treatments, and invested millions in cutting-edge research. But no matter how much money he spent, the outcome remained the same. Liam stayed confined to a wheelchair. As time passed, Charles noticed a change in his son. The once cheerful boy who laughed at silly jokes and chased butterflies in the garden now spent most of his days staring out the window, lost in thought. Physical therapy sessions became battles of willpower, and Liam often refused to participate. It broke Charles's heart to see his son so defeated. He tried to comfort Liam, promising that one day he'd walk again, but deep down, even Charles wasn't sure he believed his own words anymore. Every morning, Charles would leave the mansion in his chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce, heading to meetings or appointments. The route always took him through the poorer parts of the city, where crumbling buildings stood side by side with makeshift shacks. Street vendors called out to passers-by, hoping to sell snacks or trinkets, while beggars lined the sidewalks, holding out empty bowls or tattered hats. Most days, Charles barely glanced at them, too preoccupied with his thoughts to pay attention. But there was one person who always caught his eye, a young girl, no older than 12, sitting quietly on the corner of a busy intersection. Unlike the others, she didn't shout or wave her hands to attract attention. Instead, she simply sat there, her dark skin glowing under the harsh sunlight, her piercing gaze following Charles's car as it drove by. There was something about her that intrigued him. Perhaps it was the way she looked at him, as though she saw right through his expensive suit and fancy car to the broken man inside. One evening, as Charles returned home from yet another disappointing consultation with a renowned neurologist, his driver slowed down at a red light near the slums. The rain poured heavily, turning the streets into rivers of mud. Passers-by hurried along, clutching umbrellas or covering their heads with whatever they could find. But the girl remained seated, drenched to the bone, yet unmoving. She stepped forward suddenly, tapping lightly on the tinted window of Charles's car. At first, Charles hesitated. He wasn't in the mood to deal with beggars or hear sob stories. But something about the girl's demeanor made him curious. Against his usual instincts, he signaled for the window to be rolled down. Raindrops splashed onto his lap as he leaned, closer to hear her over the sound of thunder. "Sir," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging around them, "I know how to make your son walk again." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. For a moment, Charles stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or dismiss her outright. Who was this child, claiming to possess knowledge that some of the world's top doctors didn't? And yet there was something in her tone, something firm and unwavering, that stopped him from brushing her off completely. "What makes you think you can help my son?" Charles asked, his voice tinged with skepticism but also a flicker of hope he couldn't suppress. The girl introduced herself as Amara. She explained that she had learned ancient healing techniques from her grandmother, a respected healer in their village. According to Amara, these methods had helped many people recover from injuries that modern medicine deemed untreatable. Charles listened intently, torn between disbelief and desperation. After a brief pause, he made a decision. Whether she was genuine or just another opportunist, he decided to give her a chance. What did he have to lose? "Come with me," Charles said finally, surprising even himself. "We'll talk more at my house." And so Amara climbed into the back seat of the Rolls-Royce, leaving behind the muddy streets and the life she knew. As the car sped away, Charles couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter might change everything, for better or worse. Little did he know, the journey ahead would test not only his faith, but also his understanding of what truly mattered in life. As the weeks turned into months, Amara's presence in the Harrington household became less of an experiment and more of a cornerstone. The once skeptical staff, who had initially dismissed her as nothing more than a beggar with lofty claims, began to notice subtle changes not only in Liam, but also in the atmosphere of the house itself. There was a new energy, a sense of hope that had been absent for so long. Even Charles, whose hardened exterior had shielded him from vulnerability for years, found himself softening under Amara's quiet influence. Amara's methods were meticulous, yet gentle. Every morning she would rise before dawn, preparing herbal teas and oils infused with ingredients she sourced from trusted suppliers. She explained to Charles that these plants, some rare, others common, had been used for centuries in her village to treat ailments ranging from muscle pain to nerve damage. Though modern medicine often dismissed such remedies as superstition, Amara insisted that their effectiveness lay in their simplicity and connection to nature. Each day began with Liam sitting cross-legged on a mat in the spacious living room, surrounded by the faint scent of lavender and eucalyptus. Amara guided him through breathing exercises designed to calm his mind and awaken his body. "Your thoughts are powerful," she told him one morning, her voice steady and reassuring. "If you believe you can't walk again, your body will listen to that belief. But if you tell yourself you're strong enough, your muscles will follow." At first, Liam struggled to focus during these sessions. His frustration bubbled over at times, especially when progress seemed slow or non-existent. On one particularly difficult day, he threw a pillow across the room after failing to lift his leg even an inch off the ground. "Why bother?" he snapped, tears welling up in his eyes. "Nothing's changing." Amara didn't scold him or offer empty platitudes. Instead, she knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Change doesn't happen all at once," she said softly. "It starts small, like a seed planted in the soil. You won't see it right away, but every effort you make waters that seed. Trust me, Liam. I've seen this work before." Her words, spoken with unwavering conviction, calmed the storm inside him. Slowly but surely, Liam learned to channel his frustration into determination. He began visualizing himself walking again, not as a distant dream, but as something within reach. This shift in mindset proved crucial, as Amara often reminded him. Healing wasn't just physical, it was mental and emotional too. By mid-morning, they moved on to physical exercises tailored to strengthen Liam's core and legs. Using resistance bands and light weights, Amara helped him perform movements that mimicked walking motions. At first, these exercises left him exhausted, his muscles trembling from the effort. But over time, his endurance improved, and he noticed small victories, his toes wiggling slightly, his knees bending a fraction more than before. One afternoon, while working on balance exercises, Amara introduced crutches into their routine. "These aren't here to replace your legs," she explained, holding them out for Liam to grasp. "They're tools to help you rediscover how it feels to stand tall." Liam hesitated, gripping the crutches tightly as though they might betray him. "What if I fall?" "Then we'll pick you back up," Amara replied simply. "Falling is part of learning. Every step forward starts with a stumble." Encouraged by her confidence, Liam took a deep breath and pushed himself upright, leaning heavily on the crutches. For several seconds he swayed unsteadily, his knuckles white from gripping the handles. Then, slowly, he managed to take a single step forward. It was clumsy and awkward, but it was a step nonetheless. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes as he looked up at Amara, who beamed with pride. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "See? Your body remembers." The small triumph fueled Liam's resolve. Over the next few weeks, he practiced tirelessly, sometimes collapsing in exhaustion but always getting back up. Charles watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with emotion each time Liam achieved another milestone. Though he still harbored doubts about whether Liam would fully recover, he couldn't deny the progress unfolding before his eyes. Meanwhile, Amara continued to push boundaries, not just with Liam's treatment, but with the way she challenged Charles's worldview. One evening, as they sat together in the study reviewing Liam's progress, Charles voiced a question that had lingered in his mind for some time. How do you stay so patient? He asked, genuinely curious. Most people would have given up, by now, seeing how slow the results are. Amara smiled thoughtfully, folding her hands in her lap. Patience isn't waiting without hope, she replied. It's believing that what you're doing matters, even when you can't see the outcome yet. My grandmother taught me that healing takes time because the body and the soul need space to heal themselves. Rushing only causes more harm. Her words resonated deeply with Charles, who realized how much of his life had been spent rushing to build his empire, rushing to fix Liam's condition, rushing to outrun his own guilt. For the first time, he allowed himself to slow down, to appreciate the journey rather than obsess over the destination. As the months rolled on, Amara's impact extended beyond Liam's recovery. She inspired Charles to reflect on his priorities and the legacy he wanted to leave behind. One day, while accompanying Amara to a local market to purchase herbs, Charles was struck by the stark contrast between the bustling stalls and the sterile boardrooms he was accustomed to. Vendors called out cheerful greetings, children darted between customers, and the air buzzed with life. Here, wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts but in shared smiles and community bonds. Inspired by what he saw, Charles decided to use his resources to give back to the very neighborhoods he had ignored for so long. He funded free clinics in the slums, providing health care to those who couldn't afford it. He also established a foundation dedicated to preserving traditional healing practices, ensuring that knowledge like Amara's wouldn't fade away in the face of modernization. Word of these initiatives spread quickly, earning Charles both admiration and criticism. Some praised him for using his wealth to uplift others, while others accused him of seeking redemption for past sins. But Charles paid little attention to the naysayers. What mattered most was the gratitude in the eyes of those he helped and the growing bond between him, Liam, and Amara. As winter gave way to spring, Liam's progress accelerated. He could now take several steps with the aid of crutches, his movements becoming steadier and more confident. One sunny morning, as he practiced walking along the garden path, he turned to Amara with a mischievous grin. "Think I'll ever run again?" he teased, trying to mask his nervousness with humor. Amara chuckled, her eyes twinkling. "One step at a time, Liam. First, let's master walking. Running can come later." Though her tone was light, her message carried weight. Progress required patience and perseverance. And though the road ahead was still long, Liam and everyone around him knew that the impossible was no longer out of reach. Through it all, Amara remained steadfast, her humility and wisdom reminding those around her of the power of belief, kindness, and resilience. She wasn't just helping Liam walk again. She was teaching the entire Harrington family how to live again, with purpose, with gratitude, and with hearts wide open to the possibilities of tomorrow. Months passed since Amara's departure, and life in the Harrington household continued to evolve in ways Charles could never have imagined. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and isolation, had transformed into a hub of warmth, purpose, and connection. The staff, who had initially viewed Amara with suspicion, now spoke of her with admiration, often recalling her kindness and wisdom during quiet moments in the kitchen or garden. Her absence was felt deeply, but her influence remained alive in every corner of the home. Liam's recovery progressed steadily, each day bringing new milestones. By summer, he was able to walk short distances without assistance, his steps growing more confident with practice. Soccer balls rolled across the lawn again, laughter echoed through the halls, and the boy who had once stared listlessly out the window now bounded around with boundless energy. His transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional and spiritual too. He had rediscovered his zest for life, thanks in large part to Amara's unwavering belief in him. Charles, too, underwent a profound change. The man who had once measured success solely by profits and possessions now found fulfillment in giving back to others. Inspired by Amara's example, he dedicated himself to uplifting communities that had long been overlooked. Free clinics thrived under his support, providing health care to thousands who otherwise would have gone untreated. He also funded educational programs for underprivileged children, ensuring they had access to opportunities that had eluded so many before them. One afternoon, as Charles sat in his study reviewing plans for a new community center, Liam burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Dad, guess what?" Charles looked up from his papers, smiling at the sight of his son standing tall and vibrant. "What is it?" "I ran today," Liam announced, barely able to contain his joy. "Not far, just a few steps, but I did it." Tears welled up in Charles's eyes as he stood and embraced his son. "That's incredible, Liam. You've worked so hard for this." "It's because of Amara," Liam said earnestly. "She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. We should do something to thank her." The idea sparked something in Charles. Though Amara had left months ago, her impact on their lives was undeniable. Determined to honor her memory and share her story, Charles decided to organize an event, celebrating traditional healing practices, a tribute not only to Amara, but to the countless healers whose knowledge had been passed down through generations. The event took place in the heart of the city, in a park surrounded by towering skyscrapers and bustling streets. On the day of the gathering, hundreds of people arrived, locals, journalists, and even government officials eager to learn about alternative approaches to health and wellness. Booths lined the pathways, showcasing herbal remedies, meditation techniques, and ancient therapies. Performers sang folk songs and danced to rhythms that told stories of resilience and hope. At the center of it all stood Charles, addressing the crowd with heartfelt gratitude. "Today," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, "we celebrate the power of tradition, compassion, and belief. My son Liam is walking again, not because of modern medicine alone, but because of a young girl named Amara, who reminded us that healing comes in many forms." He paused, scanning the sea of faces before continuing. "Amara taught us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions. It's measured in moments of connection, acts of kindness, and the courage to believe in what seems impossible. This event is our way of saying thank you, to her, to healers everywhere, and to the communities that keep these traditions alive." As Charles spoke, cameras flashed and applause rippled through the audience. But amidst the noise, one figure stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, a young girl with dark skin and piercing eyes, watching intently. It was Amara. After the speeches ended and the festivities began, Charles spotted her making her way toward him. His breath caught in his throat as he approached her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Amara," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "You came." She smiled shyly, nodding. "I heard about the event and wanted to see it for myself. It's beautiful." "You're the reason it exists," Charles replied, gesturing to the lively scene around them. "Thank you for everything." Amara shook her head, her expression humble. "This isn't my doing. It's yours, and Liam's. All I did was plant a seed. You're the ones who made it grow." Her words reminded Charles of the lessons she had taught him, that true leadership isn't about taking credit but empowering others to shine. As they walked together through the festival, Amara reunited with Liam, who greeted her with an enthusiastic hug. "You won't believe how fast I can run now," he exclaimed, pulling her toward the field where children played soccer. For the rest of the day, Amara mingled with attendees, sharing stories of her grandmother's teachings and demonstrating simple healing techniques. People listened intently, captivated by her wisdom and humility. By evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the park, Charles realized that this moment wasn't just a celebration, it was a beginning. In the weeks that followed, Amara returned to her village, carrying with her the experiences and friendships she had forged in the city. Charles stayed in touch, sending updates on Liam's progress and inviting her to visit whenever she wished. Though their worlds were vastly different, the bond they shared transcended background and circumstance. As for Charles, he continued his work, driven by a renewed sense of purpose. He expanded his foundation, collaborating with healers and researchers to bridge the gap between traditional and modern medicine. He also spent more time with Liam, cherishing the moments they had nearly lost. Together they explored parks, attended sports events, and simply enjoyed being father and son. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the stars, Liam turned to Charles with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think we'll ever see Amara again?" Charles smiled, gazing at the night sky. "I'm sure we will. Some people leave footprints on your heart that never fade. Amara is one of those people." And indeed, Amara's legacy lived on, not just in the Harrington family, but in the countless lives touched by the ripple effect of her actions. She had shown them that true strength lies not in titles or riches, but in the ability to inspire, uplift, and transform. Through her courage and compassion, she had rewritten their story, and in doing so had given them the greatest gift of all: hope. Underneath the vast expanse of stars, Charles and Liam sat side by side, grateful for the journey they had traveled and excited for the future ahead. They knew that no matter where life took them, the lessons Amara had taught them would guide their steps, lighting the way forward like a beacon in the dark. And though she was miles away, her presence lingered in their hearts. A reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures can create the biggest changes. The turning point came on a crisp spring morning, the kind where the sun casts long golden rays over dew-kissed grass and the air feels fresh with promise. It was a day like any other in the Harrington household, or so it seemed at first. Liam had been practicing his exercises diligently, taking small but steady steps forward both literally and figuratively. Yet no one could have anticipated what would happen that morning, a moment that would forever alter the course of their lives. Amara arrived early, as she always did, carrying a basket filled with freshly picked herbs and vials of fragrant oils. She greeted Charles and Liam warmly before setting up for their session in the garden. The flowers were in full bloom, their vibrant colors painting the yard with life. Birds chirped melodiously from nearby trees, creating an atmosphere of tranquility that matched the growing optimism within the family. "Today," Amara announced, her voice calm yet brimming with quiet excitement, "we're going to focus on balance and strength. But I want you to remember something important, Liam. You've already come so far. Trust yourself." Liam nodded, determination etched across his face. Over the past months, he had grown stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. He no longer doubted his ability to improve. Instead, he embraced each challenge with grit and resilience. Amara's unwavering belief in him had ignited a fire within, one that burned brighter with every passing day. They began with stretches and resistance, exercises working to strengthen Liam's core muscles. As usual, Amara guided him through each movement with precision and care, offering encouragement whenever he faltered. By mid-morning, they moved on to walking practice. This time, however, Amara made a subtle change. She removed one of the crutches, leaving Liam to rely more heavily on his own strength. At first, Liam hesitated, gripping the remaining crutch tightly as if it were a lifeline. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, glancing nervously at Amara. "I'm sure," she replied with a reassuring smile. "You don't need 2 crutches anymore. Your body is ready." Though apprehensive, Liam trusted her judgment. With Amara supporting him from behind, and Charles watching anxiously from the sidelines, Liam took a deep breath and stepped forward. His legs wobbled slightly, but he managed to stay upright. One step became 2, then 3. Each stride was shaky but deliberate, fueled by sheer willpower. Charles watched in awe, his heart pounding in his chest. For years he had poured millions into cutting-edge treatments and experimental therapies, only to be met with disappointment. Now here was a young girl with no formal medical training, achieving what countless specialists had deemed impossible. Tears welled up in his eyes as he realized the magnitude of what was happening. And then, without warning, it happened. As Liam reached the end of the garden path, he stumbled, but instead of falling, he instinctively caught himself standing unaided for the first time in 2 years. Time seemed to freeze as everyone held their breath. Then, slowly, Liam straightened, his posture, his gaze fixed ahead as though daring gravity itself to pull him down. "I'm doing it," he whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief and joy. "I'm standing." Amara clapped her hands softly, her eyes glistening with pride. "Yes, you are," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Now take another step." Summoning every ounce of courage, Liam lifted one foot and placed it cautiously in front of the other. The movement was awkward and uneven, but it was unmistakably real. He walked 3 full steps, unsupported, unaided, before collapsing into Amara's arms, laughing and crying all at once. Charles rushed forward, tears streaming down his face as he embraced his son. "You did it, Liam," he choked out, his voice breaking. "You really did it." For a moment the world stood still. The weight of guilt and regret that had burdened Charles for so long lifted ever so slightly, replaced by a surge of hope and gratitude. He turned to Amara, his expression a mixture of admiration and reverence. "Thank you," he said simply, unable to find words profound enough to capture what she had done for his family. Word of Liam's progress spread quickly throughout the household. Servants who had once viewed Amara with suspicion now looked at her with newfound respect. News traveled beyond the mansion walls too, reaching the ears of neighbors, reporters, and even strangers in the city. Within days, journalists began showing up at the gates, eager to document the miraculous recovery of the millionaire's son. But Charles refused to let the media circus overshadow Amara's work or exploit her story. He instructed security to keep reporters at bay, shielding the household from intrusive cameras and flashing lights. Instead, he focused on celebrating quietly with those closest to him: his son, his staff, and, most importantly, Amara. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the garden, Charles called everyone together for a heartfelt gathering. Standing beside Liam, who now sat proudly in his wheelchair, a symbol of how far he'd come, Charles addressed the group. "I owe everything we've achieved to this remarkable young woman," he began, gesturing toward Amara. "She didn't just give my son the gift of walking again. She reminded us all of what truly matters: compassion, faith, and the power of believing in someone when they can't believe in themselves." Amara shifted uncomfortably under the spotlight, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. When Charles invited her to speak, she hesitated before stepping forward, her voice soft but firm. "It wasn't me," she said simply. "It was your love for your son and his determination that healed him. All I did was show him the way." Her humility struck a chord with everyone present. Despite her extraordinary achievements, Amara remained grounded, refusing to take credit for what she saw as a collective effort. Her wisdom extended beyond physical healing. She understood the importance of empowering others rather than elevating herself. As the weeks passed, Liam continued to make remarkable strides. With Amara's guidance, he transitioned from using crutches to walking short distances independently. Physical therapy sessions became less about survival and more about reclaiming the active, joyful life he once led. Soccer balls reappeared in the garden, and laughter echoed through the halls of the mansion once again. Charles, inspired by Amara's selflessness, doubled down on his commitment to giving back to the community. He expanded the free clinics he had established, ensuring that underserved neighborhoods received access to quality health care. He also collaborated with local healers and practitioners, incorporating traditional methods into mainstream medicine. In doing so, he honored not only Amara's legacy, but also the rich cultural heritage she represented. Yet despite the accolades and opportunities that came his way, Charles never lost sight of the lessons Amara had taught him. He learned to slow down, to cherish moments of connection, and to value people over possessions. For the first time in years, he felt truly fulfilled, not because of his wealth or status, but because of the meaningful relationships he had rebuilt. As for Amara, she remained humble amidst the praise and recognition. Though offered a permanent place in the Harrington household, she politely declined, explaining that her purpose lay elsewhere. "My home is with my people," she told Charles one evening as they strolled through the garden. "I came here to help Liam, and now that he's on the path to recovery, it's time for me to return." Charles respected her decision, though it pained him to see her go. On the day of her departure, he presented her with a modest yet heartfelt gift, a scholarship fund in her name, designed to support young girls from disadvantaged backgrounds who dreamed of pursuing education and making a difference in their communities. "Thank you for everything, Amara," Charles said as they stood by the gate, the morning sun casting a golden hue over the scene. "You've changed our lives in ways I'll never be able to repay." Amara smiled, her eyes reflecting the same warmth and wisdom that had captured Charles's attention months earlier. "You don't need to repay me," she replied. "Just keep helping others, the way you've helped me these past months. That's all the thanks I need." With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the bustling streets of the city. Though her physical presence faded, her impact lingered, a reminder that true greatness lies not in titles or riches, but in the ability to inspire, uplift, and transform lives. And so, as the Harringtons embarked on a new chapter filled with hope and renewal, they carried Amara's spirit with them, a beacon of light guiding them toward a brighter future.